Let me tell you something uncomfortable. Every December, people promise themselves a new life, new goals, new energy, new discipline, and by February, they are exhausted, disappointed, and confused. Not because they are weak, not because they are unlucky, but because they are carrying habits into the new year that silently destroy every good intention. Here is the truth no one tells you. You don't lose years because you lack effort. You lose years because you refuse to let go. If you remove just 3 habits, not add, not chase, not hustle, 2026 will not just be different. It will be unrecognizable. The first key point is about removing the habit of waiting to feel ready, because this habit quietly convinces you that your life needs permission before it can move forward. You tell yourself you're being careful, responsible, patient, but deep down, something else is happening. You are standing at the edge of your own potential, checking the weather, testing the ground, asking for signs that may never come. Readiness becomes a moving target. Every time you think you're close, it steps back again. And years pass not with noise, but with silence, not with failure, but with delay. You don't notice it at first. Waiting feels harmless, it even feels wise, but slowly it teaches your mind to sit instead of stand, to think instead of act, to observe life instead of participate in it. You see, the feeling you are waiting for is not a signal from the future. It is a habit from the past. It was built when you were rewarded for playing safe, when mistakes felt expensive, when approval mattered more than growth. So your mind learned to protect you by hesitating. It says, not yet, let's be sure. But life does not respond to certainty. Life responds to movement. The people who move forward are not fearless. They are simply tired of negotiating with their doubts every morning. They understand something simple but powerful. The mind will always ask for comfort, but the soul asks for direction. And when you listen to the wrong one for too long, you begin to feel stuck without knowing why. Think about how many times you delayed a decision because you didn't feel confident enough. But confidence is not a light switch. It is a muscle. And every time you avoid using it, it grows weaker. Waiting to feel ready is like waiting to feel strong before lifting a weight. Strength does not come first. Effort does. The first attempt is always awkward. The first step is always uncertain. The first version is always imperfect. That is not a flaw in the process. That is the process. Growth is noisy inside even when it looks calm outside. And the people who grow are not the ones who figured it all out, but the ones who accepted that clarity often arrives after action, not before it. There is a quiet cost to hesitation that no one talks about. It doesn't show up as regret immediately. It shows up as self-doubt. Every time you delay something that matters, you send yourself a message. You say, I don't trust you yet. Over time, that message becomes your identity. You start questioning your own decisions, even small ones. You look for reassurance where you once relied on instinct. And the strange part is, the more you wait, the less ready you feel. Because readiness is not something you discover. It is something you build by showing up again and again. Even when your voice shakes and your hands are unsure, there will never be a moment when fear politely steps aside and says, now it's your turn. Fear speaks even louder when something matters. It gets creative. It uses logic. It uses responsibility. It uses timing. It tells you that you should wait until life is calmer, until things are clearer, until you are better prepared. But life does not calm down to make room for your courage. You make room for courage by acting in the middle of the noise. That is how you teach your nervous system that uncertainty is survivable. That is how you stop being controlled by moods and start being guided by values. Notice how different your life would look if you treated readiness as a decision, not a feeling. You wake up and say, I may not feel ready, but I am willing to learn, willing to adjust, willing to fail forward, willing to stay in the room when it gets uncomfortable. This shift is small, but it changes everything. Because now your progress is no longer dependent on motivation, which comes and goes. It is anchored in intention. And intention does not need excitement, it needs honesty. An honest answer to one question: is this the direction I want my life to move in? When you stop waiting to feel ready, you stop asking life for guarantees. You begin to trust your ability to respond instead. You understand that mistakes are not signs to retreat but signals to refine. You stop measuring yourself by how confident you feel and start measuring yourself by how consistently you act. And something subtle begins to happen. The fear doesn't disappear, but it loses authority. It becomes background noise instead of the main voice. You are no longer waiting at the door of your own life. You are already inside, adjusting the furniture, learning the space, becoming familiar with who you are when you choose movement over hesitation. The second key point is about removing the habit of explaining yourself to everyone, because this habit slowly teaches you to hand over the steering wheel of your life to other people's opinions. At first, it doesn't feel like weakness. It feels like courtesy. You think you are being clear, respectful, mature. But beneath that calm surface, something else is happening. Each explanation becomes a quiet request for approval. Each extra sentence is a way of saying, "Please understand me so I can feel okay moving forward." Over time, you stop trusting your own decisions unless someone else nods first. And without realizing it, your life begins to move only when others are comfortable with the direction. Most explanations are not given because they are needed. They are given because of fear. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of being judged. Fear of being seen as selfish, strange, or wrong. So you soften your choices. You wrap them in reasons. You prepare defenses before anyone even attacks. And in doing so, you drain your own conviction. A decision that was once clear becomes shaky the more you talk about it. The more you explain, the more you invite opinions that were never meant to carry weight in your life. Not every question deserves an answer. Not every raised eyebrow deserves a response. There is a difference between clarity and justification. Clarity is calm. Justification is restless. When you are clear, your words are few. When you are justifying, your words multiply. You repeat yourself in different ways, hoping one version will be accepted. But the truth is, people don't need to understand your journey for it to be valid. Understanding is a bonus, not a requirement. Many people cannot support a path they are not brave enough to walk themselves. And when you over-explain, you lower your voice to match their comfort, instead of standing steady in your own truth. Notice how much energy explaining consumes. You replay conversations in your head. You imagine responses to questions that haven't even been asked yet. You feel tired without having done anything physically demanding. That exhaustion is not from effort. It is from self-betrayal in small doses. Each time you explain yourself unnecessarily, you step away from your center. You begin living slightly off balance, leaning toward acceptance instead of alignment. And the more you lean, the harder it becomes to stand straight again. Strong people are often misunderstood, not because they are unclear, but because they are consistent. Consistency confuses those who live by moods. Silence unsettles those who expect explanations. When you stop explaining, you create a quiet boundary. You are not shutting people out. You are simply letting them stay where they are while you continue forward. Your life is not a public presentation. It is a personal commitment. You don't owe everyone a map of your mind or a detailed plan of your future. This doesn't mean becoming cold or distant. It means becoming selective. It means knowing who has earned access to your thoughts and who has only earned your politeness. When you explain less, you listen more. When you speak less, your words carry more weight. You begin to notice that the people who truly support you don't demand explanations. They recognize conviction when they see it. And those who required constant justification were never looking to understand. They were looking to control the outcome. As you release the habit of explaining yourself, something settles inside you. Your decisions feel quieter but stronger. You stop rehearsing your life and start living it. You walk a little slower but with more certainty. You no longer measure your choices by how well they will be received, but by how honestly they reflect who you are becoming. And in that silence, in that restraint, you discover a new kind of confidence. Not loud, not defensive, just steady. The third key point is about removing the habit of starting many things and finishing none. Because this habit quietly fragments your life into pieces that never come together. Every unfinished task leaves a small open loop in your mind. One project here, one plan there, one promise you meant to return to. Individually, they seem harmless. Together, they create a constant sense of pressure you can't fully explain. It feels like being surrounded by half-built bridges, always standing on the edge but never crossing. You are busy yet unsettled, active yet unsatisfied. And over time, this pattern teaches your mind that effort does not lead to completion, only to exhaustion. Starting is easy because it feeds hope. It gives you a quick rush of possibility. Finishing is different. Finishing requires you to stay after the excitement fades, when the work becomes quiet and repetitive. This is the moment most people escape. They tell themselves they are exploring options, keeping doors open, staying flexible. But flexibility without commitment turns into drift. When you leave too many things unfinished, your focus scatters. Your energy leaks in all directions. And instead of building depth in one place, you keep resetting yourself to zero in many places. There is an emotional cost to unfinished effort that few people recognize. Each time you walk away from something you began, a small part of your self-trust weakens. You start doubting whether you can rely on yourself when things get uncomfortable. You hesitate before committing again, not because you lack ability, but because experience has taught you that you might not stay. This is how unfinished habits shape identity. You don't just leave tasks incomplete, you leave behind a version of yourself that could have grown through them. Finishing does not mean perfection, it means presence. It means staying with something long enough to learn what it is trying to teach you. Discomfort, boredom, resistance, these are not signs to quit. They are signals that growth has begun. When you stay, something shifts inside you. You stop chasing the thrill of starting and start respecting the power of endurance. You realize that momentum is not built from excitement but from repetition. And repetition, when done with intention, quietly reshapes who you are. Many people confuse having many options with having progress. But options are only valuable when you choose one. Otherwise, they become noise. Too many beginnings create mental clutter. Your attention keeps jumping, never settling long enough to produce real results. Focus is not about saying yes to the right thing. It is about saying no to everything else for a while. When you commit to finishing, you simplify your world. You give your mind a single direction to move in, and suddenly, energy that was scattered starts to feel available again. There is a calm strength that comes from completion. Not loud confidence, but grounded belief. When you finish what you start, you collect evidence that you can stay. Stay when it gets dull. Stay when progress slows. Stay when no one is watching. This evidence changes how you approach everything else. You trust your word more. You plan more realistically. You stop overpromising and start delivering. And slowly, discipline stops feeling like force and starts feeling like self-respect. As you let go of the habit of starting and abandoning, Your relationship with time changes. You stop rushing toward the next new thing and start honoring the one in front of you. You learn that depth creates impact, not speed. One finished effort carries more weight than 10 abandoned attempts. And in choosing to finish, you are not limiting yourself. You are finally giving yourself the chance to see what you are capable of when you don't walk away halfway through becoming it. The fourth key point is about removing the habit of talking to yourself carelessly, because this is the one habit that shapes every other habit without you noticing. You may not hear it clearly, but there is a voice running in the background of your life all day long. It comments on your choices, reacts to your mistakes, and judges your efforts in real time. This voice speaks when no one else is around, and the way it speaks to you becomes the way you experience life. If that voice is harsh, life feels heavy. If that voice is doubtful, every step feels uncertain. You don't need someone else to limit you when your inner dialogue is already doing the job. Most people would never speak to a friend the way they speak to themselves. They would never constantly remind someone of their past mistakes, question their ability at every turn, or label them as slow, weak, or behind. Yet this is the language many people use inside their own mind. It feels normal because it's familiar. You grew up hearing criticism, comparison, correction. Over time, those external voices became internal ones. Now they sound like your own thoughts, even though they were never meant to define you. And the danger is not the thought itself. The danger is believing it without question. Every careless word you say to yourself plants a quiet seed. When you say, "I'm just not good at this," the mind listens. When you say, "This always happens to me," the mind accepts it as a pattern. The mind does not argue, it records. It adjusts your behavior to match the story you keep telling. If the story is small, your actions shrink. If the story is fragile, your effort hesitates. This is not about positive thinking or pretending everything is fine. It is about being responsible with the words that shape your identity. There is a difference between being honest with yourself and being unkind to yourself. Honesty says, "I made a mistake, now I can learn." Carelessness says, "I always mess things up." One creates movement, the other creates a wall. When your inner voice becomes careless, you start carrying unnecessary weight. You second guess simple decisions. You replay moments the are already over. You hesitate to try again because the voice reminds you of every time you fell short. And slowly, without any dramatic failure, your confidence erodes. Your inner voice is not just commentary, it is instruction. It tells your nervous system whether you are safe or threatened. If you constantly speak to yourself in a tense, critical way, your body stays alert, guarded, tired. You may call it stress or pressure, but often it is self-generated. When the inner voice softens, the body follows. You think more clearly. You respond instead of react. You begin to see options instead of obstacles. This is not weakness, this is intelligence. You are not lowering your standards, you are removing unnecessary cruelty from the process of growth. Changing the way you speak to yourself does not mean replacing every negative thought with a positive one. That feels forced, and the mind resists it. The shift is simpler. You move from judgment to observation. Instead of saying, "I failed," you say, "This didn't work." Instead of saying, "I'm behind," you say, "I'm still learning." These small changes matter. They keep you engaged instead of defeated. They allow you to stay in the effort instead of emotionally quitting halfway through. As your inner dialogue becomes more intentional, you notice something important. You become more patient with yourself. And patience creates consistency. You stop rushing growth. You stop panicking when progress feels slow. You understand that improvement is not linear, and that does not mean it is absent. When the inner voice supports instead of attacks, You recover faster from setbacks. You don't spiral, you adjust. And that ability to recover is what separates people who keep going from people who quietly give up. When you stop talking to yourself carelessly, you reclaim authority over your inner world. You become someone who can be firm without being destructive, honest without being harsh, ambitious without being cruel. Your thoughts begin to feel like guidance instead of punishment. And in that shift, your actions change naturally. You show up with more steadiness. You take risks without tearing yourself down. You begin to trust that even if things don't go perfectly, you will not abandon yourself in the process. The fifth key point is about removing the habit of confusing busy with progress. Because this habit keeps you moving while quietly keeping you in the same place. You wake up with a full schedule, your phone already demanding attention, your mind already racing ahead. By the end of the day, you are tired, maybe even proud of how much you handled. Yet when you pause, something feels missing. Effort was spent, but direction was unclear. Being busy can feel like proof that you are trying, but trying is not the same as advancing. Motion without meaning slowly drains you, and over time, it becomes harder to tell whether you are building a life or simply maintaining momentum. Busyness often becomes a hiding place. It protects you from asking harder questions. When you are constantly occupied, you don't have to sit with uncertainty. You don't have to decide what truly matters. You don't have to face the possibility that some of what you are doing is unnecessary. So you fill every gap. You respond quickly. You say yes automatically. Your days become crowded, but your mind becomes scattered. And in that scatter, focus disappears. Progress needs space. Without space, even good efforts cancel each other out. There is a quiet difference between activity and alignment. Activity is loud, it demands attention, it feels urgent. Alignment is subtle, it feels calm, almost boring at times. But alignment moves you forward even when the pace is slow. When you confuse the two, you begin measuring your worth by how much you do instead of why you do it. You chase productivity instead of purpose, and slowly you lose connection with the original reason you started. The danger is not that you are doing too little. The danger is that you are doing too much of what doesn't matter. Notice how busyness affects your thinking. When your schedule is packed, your thoughts become shallow. You jump from one thing to another without fully entering any of them. Reflection feels like a luxury you can't afford, but reflection is not wasted time. It is the space where clarity forms. Without it, you repeat patterns instead of correcting them. You stay efficient at tasks that no longer serve you. You become good at staying busy instead of becoming better at living intentionally. Progress often feels quieter than busyness. It may look like fewer tasks, fewer conversations, fewer commitments. From the outside, it can even look like you are doing less. But inside, something important is happening. Your energy is no longer scattered, your attention is no longer divided. You begin to feel a sense of direction, even if the results are not immediate. Progress does not shout, it whispers. And you can only hear it when you slow down enough to listen. When you remove the habit of confusing busy with progress, you start asking different questions. Not how much did I do today, but what moved the needle. Not was I productive, but was I intentional? These questions are uncomfortable at first because they require honesty. They may force you to let go of tasks that make you feel useful but keep you stuck. They may require you to disappoint people who benefit from your busyness. But in that discomfort, your priorities begin to sharpen. Busyness often earns praise, but progress earns peace. Peace does not come from doing everything. It comes from doing the right things consistently. When you choose progress over busyness, you give yourself permission to rest without guilt. You stop filling time just to feel important. You understand that stillness is not laziness when it leads to clarity. And clarity is what allows effort to compound instead of cancel itself out. As this shift deepens, your days begin to feel lighter, even when the work is meaningful. You are no longer rushing just to keep up, you are moving with intention. You start protecting your time not because you are selfish, but because you are focused. You recognize that energy is limited, and where you place it shapes your future. And in that awareness, you begin to experience a new kind of momentum, one that doesn't exhaust you, but quietly carries you forward. The sixth key point is about removing the habit of living in the past or borrowing worry from the future, because this habit quietly steals your strength while pretending to protect you. The mind has a strange tendency to travel to places the body cannot go. It replays what has already happened or rushes ahead. Add to what might happen, rarely staying where life is actually unfolding. You may call it thinking, planning, or reflecting, but often it is neither useful nor kind. It is simply repetition. And repetition without awareness turns into a prison you carry with you, even when nothing around you is holding you back. When you live in the past, you are not really remembering, you are reliving. You return to old moments not to learn but to judge yourself again. You replay conversations with sharper words than were ever spoken. You imagine different endings as if the mind could rewrite time if it tried hard enough. But the past does not change through regret. It only grows heavier. Each visit adds another layer of emotional weight, and that weight does not stay in yesterday. It leaks into today, shaping how you speak, how you decide, how much you allow yourself to hope. Borrowing worry from the future works the same way, just in the opposite direction. You imagine scenarios that have not happened yet and treat them as if they are already real. You prepare for pain before it arrives. You brace yourself for failure that may never come. This constant anticipation drains your energy before it is even needed. It is like packing for a storm that might never reach you, and then struggling to walk because of the extra weight you chose to carry. The future does not ask you to suffer in advance. It only asks you to be present enough to respond when the time comes. Is a subtle comfort in living everywhere except the present. The present moment demands honesty. It asks you to feel what you are feeling without distraction. It asks you to take responsibility for the next small step. The past lets you blame. The future lets you delay. But the present offers no hiding place. That is why many people avoid it. They fill their minds with memory or worry because stillness feels unfamiliar. Yet the present is the only place where change can happen. It is the only place where effort has power. Think of your attention like a beam of light. Wherever you aim it, energy flows. When your attention is split between regret and anxiety, that beam becomes weak. It flickers. But when you bring it back to now, it sharpens. You begin to notice what is within your control and what is not. You stop arguing with time. You stop demanding answers from moments that haven't arrived. This does not make you careless. It makes you precise. You plan without panic. You reflect without drowning. You move forward without dragging unnecessary weight behind you. The present moment is often quieter than the noise in your head. That quiet can feel uncomfortable at first, but within it is a grounded strength. When you stay here, you realize that many of the things you feared have already passed, and many of the things you fear ahead have no evidence yet. You begin to trust your ability to handle what comes, instead of fearing it in advance. Trust is built by being present through difficulty, not by escaping it mentally. Each time you stay, you prove to yourself that you are capable of meeting life as it is. Letting go of the past does not mean erasing it. It means changing your relationship with it. You carry the lesson, not the wound. You remember without reopening. Letting go of future worry does not mean abandoning responsibility. It means preparing wisely and then releasing control over outcomes you cannot command. This balance is subtle. It requires practice. But with each moment you choose presence over rumination, your mind becomes a place of support instead of stress. As this habit loosens, you notice a shift in how you experience time. Days feel fuller, not because more is happening, but because you are actually there for them. You listen more deeply, you respond more calmly, you stop rushing through moments just to reach the next one. The present begins to feel like a stable ground instead of a temporary stop. And from that ground, your decisions become clearer, your emotions steadier, and your sense of self less dependent on what was or what might be. The seventh key point is about removing the habit of quitting on yourself quietly, because this is the most dangerous form of quitting there is. It doesn't announce itself, it doesn't create a dramatic moment. It happens in small decisions that feel reasonable at the time. You lower the standard just a little. You try a little less today than you did yesterday. You tell yourself it's temporary, that you'll get serious again soon. But quiet quitting stacks up. And one day, you look back and realize you didn't fail loudly, you faded slowly. Most people don't abandon their dreams all at once. They abandon their effort first. They stop showing up fully when no one is watching. They stop keeping promises that only they know about. On the outside, everything looks fine. Life continues, responsibilities are handled. But inside, there's a subtle disconnect. A part of you knows you're capable of more, and that knowledge becomes heavy, not painful enough to force change, but uncomfortable enough to drain energy. That's the cost of quietly stepping away from your own potential. Quiet quitting often disguises itself as being realistic. You tell yourself you're just managing expectations, protecting your peace, avoiding disappointment. But honesty matters here. There is a difference between adjusting wisely and giving up slowly. Adjusting keeps your dignity intact. Quitting erodes it. When you stop pushing yourself in small ways, you begin to lose trust in yourself, and self-trust is fragile. It's built through action, not intention. Each time you break a promise to yourself, even a small one, that trust weakens. The hardest part is that no one else can see this happening. There is no external pressure to stop. No one confronts you. No one calls it out. So the habit grows in silence. You begin to tolerate things you once said you wouldn't. You accept routines that keep you comfortable but unfulfilled. And because nothing collapses immediately, it feels safe. But safety without growth slowly turns into regret. You don't feel it every day. You feel it in quiet moments, when you wonder why you're restless despite having everything you thought you wanted. Staying committed to yourself is not about intensity. It's about integrity. It's about doing what you said you would do, even when the mood is gone, even when progress feels invisible. This is where most people step back, not because they are incapable, but because the reward is delayed. The work becomes ordinary, the excitement fades, and without excitement, they assume something is wrong. But nothing is wrong. This is the phase where discipline replaces motivation, and discipline is simply self-respect in action. When you stop quitting on yourself, your life doesn't suddenly become easy, but it becomes honest. You stop making excuses that sound logical but feel hollow. You face the discomfort of consistency. You learn to sit with effort without constant validation. And something powerful happens in that space. You begin to trust yourself again. Not because you are perfect, but because you are reliable. You know that when things get uncomfortable, you won't disappear from your own life. There is a deep confidence that comes from knowing you won't abandon yourself. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't need recognition. It shows up as calm, as steadiness, as the ability to keep going even when no one is cheering. Confidence changes how you walk into rooms, how you make decisions, how you recover from setbacks. You stop panicking when things don't work out immediately. You stop overreacting to small failures. You understand that consistency over time creates outcomes that intensity never can. As you remove the habit of quietly quitting, your standards rise naturally, Not in a harsh way, but in a grounded one. You expect more from yourself because you know what happens when you don't. You stop negotiating with the voice that asks you to settle. You choose to stay present in the effort, even on days that feel ordinary or heavy. And in choosing to stay again and again, you begin to build a life that feels solid from the inside. Because it is built on one simple truth: you didn't walk away when it mattered most. As you stand here now, nothing outside you has changed yet. The world is the same, your responsibilities are the same, your challenges are still waiting. But something inside has shifted. You can feel it in the way your thoughts slow down, in the way your breathing settles. You are no longer searching for a new version of life. You are returning to a truer version of yourself. You've seen how much energy was leaking through habits that felt small but shaped everything: waiting instead of moving, explaining instead of trusting, starting without staying, speaking to yourself without care, staying busy without direction, living everywhere except the present, quietly stepping away from your own standards. None of these made you weak, they made you human. And now awareness gives you a choice you didn't fully have before. Strength is not loud. It doesn't need an audience. It shows up as steadiness on ordinary days, as honesty in private moments, as the ability to stay with yourself when things feel uncertain. Real change does not arrive with a rush of emotion. It arrives with calm decisions made consistently, even when no one is watching. You don't need to fix your entire life at once. Doesn't ask for perfection. It asks for presence, for responsibility over your inner world, for courage in small, repeated choices. When you remove what weakens you, what remains is not emptiness. What remains is clarity. And clarity creates direction without force. There will be days when old habits try to return. That doesn't mean you failed. It means you are aware enough to notice. Each moment you choose differently, even slightly, you reinforce a new standard. Not imposed from outside, but chosen from within. This is how a year changes. Quietly, gradually, permanently. Carry this understanding gently. Let it guide your thoughts, your pace, your expectations. F yourself. You are not behind. You are not late. You are exactly where you need to be to begin moving forward with intention. And as you step back into your life, remember this: when you honor yourself in small ways, life responds in meaningful ones. Not immediately, not dramatically, but steadily. And that steady progress, grounded and honest, is what truly shapes a winning year.